Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Amir Cohen. I am Director of Business Analytics at Calculum, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's webinar. Let's go over really quick housekeeping information. So first, I want to know that this presentation is being recorded. We'll send the recording of the presentation in the next few days. Secondly, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, about 15 minutes. This is your opportunity to ask any question, and our speakers would be more than happy to answer them. The agenda for today, we will start with the introduction, and then we move on to working capital. Why is it a top priority for companies today? Levers to optimize working capital, benefits of supply chain finance, key success factors in supply chain finance, cooperation between procurement and finance, Teva's cash optimization and working capital journey, and what are the steps to get you started. So before we start with the presentation, let me introduce you to our speakers today. We have Michael Ben-Moshe, Mickey, who is VP of Finance, Corporate Treasury at Teva. He has 19 years of experience in the pharma and financial sectors. He established in leading award-winning teams specializing in implementing cutting-edge corporate finance and treasury methodologies. He driving success across domains such as working capital, liquidity optimization, financial risk management, corporate finance, and treasury operations. Next, we have Oliver Belin, founder and CEO of Calculum. 20 years of experience in supply chain finance at Prime Avenue, GSCF, Sumitomo Bank, and Marco Polo Network. He was also the founder of Swiss Commercial Capital, which was successfully sold to Macquarie Bank. Last but not least, we have Shilon, founder and CEO of Nimble. Ziv is a serial entrepreneur with extensive experience across various industries, including fintech, health tech, and e-commerce. He is also a renowned public speaker and social activist, and he was part of Forbes 30 Under 30. So before we start, now we introduce to our speakers, we can move on to the discussion. According to Hackett Group, working capital is going to the second priority for CFOs, just after cost management and optimization, surfacing critical areas such as profitability and digital transformation. Mickey, could you share with us why working capital management has become such a critical focus for CFOs?
Absolutely, Amir. First, thank you everyone for taking the time and joining us today. So working capital management has become increasingly important for CFOs due to several factors. Firstly, you can name the cost of funding, which is on the rise in the last few years compared to a few years ago, when we've seen close to zero for a long period of time. So companies are starting to get used to that cost of capital element. Second, I think many companies relied on abundant capital available in the markets. And today, capital is not available anymore, not the way it used to before. So companies must manage liquidity by optimizing internal resources. And in the past, they had less incentive to invest in those resources, and that changed for sure in the last 2 years. Another factor that is very important in that shift is that boards recognize working capital importance in enhancing shareholder value. We are seeing it in Teva, we are seeing it elsewhere. They expect CFOs really to maximize efficiency and minimize financing costs. And this is really why we are seeing cash flow and working capital ranking such high.
Yeah, maybe
Oliver.
Mickey, if I can. Mickey, if I can step in. Yeah, so I'm also seeing many leading organizations across the board right now, focusing more and more on unlocking working capital and freeing up cash flow, and mainly because they have a need for that, but also to reduce their reliance on external financing. And I'm not only seeing that among treasury and finance professionals such as you, but also I see a shift among procurement professionals, who are the people which we are mainly speaking to. And for instance, in a recent survey by the advisory company GEP, they mentioned that optimizing working capital was reported last year as the second most important focus of procurement. So just after cost reduction. So what I want to say, it's not only treasury, in finance, it's procurement, it's supply chain managers, it's across the board where companies are looking at optimizing working capital. I don't know, Ziv, what is your view on this change in focus?
Yeah, Oliver, first of all, I totally agree. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. And I think, Oliver, that cash is king, especially now. CFOs all over prioritize cash preservation and liquidity. And from my perspective, in my field, it leads to a lot of fintech solution, new fintech solution for cash management and working capital optimization. Companies also addressed supply chain risks, which impact cash flow as well and profitability as well. Optimizing working capital is crucial for financial performance, and risk mitigation in today's business environment is so important, and we can see it all over. We can take it now to the next slide and dive in deeper into that.
Yes, so now if we speak about working capital, obviously we need to discuss the cash conversion cycle, which is basically, to explain it very simply, it's how long it takes an organization to get paid by its clients, the inventory days, as well as how much time it takes to pay its suppliers. And it's a great indicator how efficiently working capital is managed by a company. Now, looking at what you see here on your screen, looking at the latest data from Capital IQ, we see a trend in recent year, and the trend is basically looking at the S&P 1,500 companies between 2011 and 2022, and we see a lengthening of over 60% in the cash conversion cycle. And to make it clear, longer cash conversion is not as good as a short cash conversion cycle. So basically, to sum it up, the situation gets worse. And this is primarily, as you can see in this chart, driven by the days inventory outstanding, or DIO. And this is, I guess, also a reason why leading organizations are looking to improve it and to fix the problem. I know, Mikey, how do you see that observation, and what is your view on that?
I think you're absolutely right, and that's what we've seen, at least in Teva, and I think that many of our competitors, and especially after COVID-19 hit, supply chains really got impacted dramatically. DIO was basically non-predictable, and I think companies realized that quite fast when they didn't see cash coming in, and right away, and I think we saw it in 2021, 2022. Companies started to fix the situation through DSO and DPO, which are quite easier than DIO. And I believe that you can see it in this data that we see on the box on the right-hand side. Remarkably, 70% of companies right now have set targets for improving their working capital. That really tells the story. I don't think that we were ever near that between 2012 to 2021, when interest rates were really close to zero. So companies adopt quite fast. I think those that are fraud runners, they achieve impressively low cash conversion cycles. They can average to 87 days better than their competition. Those that are really into it, and that enhanced efficiency gives them a competitive edge. So it's not only that you need to have those processes in-house, you have to excel just so someone else in your industry will not overbeat you.
And I think, Mickey, that this is the right time to ask our audience, where does your company stand in the spectrum of leading and lagging organizations? Are you actively optimizing working capital to drive performance improvement? I believe that CFOs and leaders must consider this crucial question as they navigate the evolving landscape of working capital management. And we can see it better in the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Ziv, building on the last slide, on the last discussion, so we see that there's a focus, but now what are the different levers or options for companies or for the audience today, what they can deploy to improve their working capital?
So Oliver, there is a very good McKinsey research that outlines a spectrum of strategies for optimizing working capital, ranging from first deploying tactics to more complex solution. These strategies are scaled by the timing, complexity, or their impact on EBIT. However, it's very, very important to remember that tactics such as factoring receivable might have long-term implications, especially in the current interest rate. And this will for sure become costly. So it's very important to consider that when you're entering the process.
That's right. That's right, if I agree. I think fast deploying tactics like overdue collection, payment, and billing runs, those can contribute substantially to improving your working capital, but they are really the base layer of things, right? I think every company has to have processes in that area. They eroded in those days that we've seen zero interest rate, but as you become much mature, I think negotiating your payment terms, by the way, on both sides, suppliers and also on the commercial side, which is always not an easy thing to do, these become more critical tools to deploy. And lastly, I think we are seeing also advanced tool popping up much than before, especially on the inventory side, and we've seen algorithms and AI solutions starting to be deployed also there. So it's definitely an exciting development that we are seeing on that front.
Yeah, I agree. And also to add one important thing is we see more and more organization deploying supplier financing, or some of you know is also called reverse factoring solutions, which is the one on your screen, which is marked with a circle. And I think one of the key reasons why these companies are setting up these programs is, as we saw before, to improve their cash to cash cycle, but not only for their own organization, but as we will see later in later slides, supply chain finance programs also benefit the other side of the supply chain, which is the supplier. So it's a win-win solution. And maybe Amir, if you can go to the next slide, we can highlight some of the key benefits of supply chain finance. I don't know, Ziv or Miki, do you want to share some of the benefits?
No, I just think that this will be for sure, Oliver, the right time to delve into the specific benefits of supply chain finance. By the way, for both companies, both sides, both counterparties. And Oliver, I think it will be a good time for you to outline the incentives for the companies that utilizing it eventually supply chain finance.
Okay, I can start. I mean, first, it refines and improves the invoice payment process. There's much more efficiency gained there. And obviously, it improves, or most companies are doing that because they want to improve their cash flow by optimizing their payment terms. And as I explained before, it helps the buying organization to improve their payment terms, to align their terms to the market. But at the same time, it offers the suppliers an option to get paid earlier at mostly very attractive financing terms. And this then, because it benefits both parties, it allows to improve the relationship with key suppliers, which then improves the stability of the supply chain and can reduce some of the risks of disruptions, which we have seen during the last years, which are on the top of the radar of many organizations. So they want to make sure that not only looking at their own organization, but to make sure that the supply chain is healthy and that the suppliers have the financial strengths to be able to supply the buying organizations with strategic goods and services.
Yes, and of course, if we will shift for a second to focus the supplier itself, the early collection is good for them. It's when considering DSO and low-cost liquidity, while we are targeting the invoices that was approved by the buyer, by the corporate. And among the substantial benefits for supplier, there is a lot of relevant issues regarding to the technologies and the overhead that will appear when you do a process like that without any platform or without the interference of the buyer itself. And for that, I think the improving of the cash flow for the supplier and the process as a simple process is a benefit for the supplier as well.
I think, Ziv, that it's a powerful tool on the supplier side because it's one of those cheapest tools that allow you to impact your DSO without increasing your debt levels. Very powerful for corporates and actually for also small companies. And that combination of availability and with a low cost, I think it's something that every company should look into. I believe that, and at least at Teva, I think those two elements that you see in the middle, ESG and small medium businesses, are also critical because first, those solutions provide access to capital for those smaller counterparties that lack the access of larger firms to capital markets and banks, right? So it's a great way to finance those. And they, in our experience, they appreciate it very much. But those tools are also encouraging the adherence to ESG practices. And this is by offering better pricing and terms to those that meet certain ESG criteria. Those two things were very important for us, and we promoted our programs in light of those two. So please take those into account as well.
Yes,
I think we can
totally
move to the
agree.
next slide. Yeah.
Yeah, we can move to the next slide. I just can say from my perspective that we focused a lot when we build our product, Mickey, after the discussions that we have on the long tail. The fact that you can impact the long tail as well is highlighting what you mentioned. And after exploring the benefits of supply chain finance, let's dive deeper into understanding this powerful tool. Supply chain finance offers various solutions tailored to different aspects of supplier-buyer relationship. Those who are looking to unlock cash or even provide their suppliers with better liquidity can use the tool on its account payable financing or reverse factoring model. Others with access to a lot of cash or access to cash from their high scoring can use the solution for dynamic discount, which is a similar model that offer discounting for early payments for the suppliers and actually eventually save costs. Receivable financing and PO financing are also additional versions of what you can use with supply chain finance. And each version serves to optimize cash flow, working capital management for both parties involved, by the way. And it's crucial to recognize how supply chain finance leverage technologies to reduce financing cost and boost efficiency. And by facilitating early payments to suppliers and extending payment terms for buyers, supply chain finance actually enhance liquidity and working capital management across the supply chain, which make all the understanding of how the company is working and who is your suppliers eventually much stronger. Oliver, what do you think about it?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, if I just pick up on two trends or innovations I see in the market. So the first one is the buildup of strategic partnerships between fintech companies to add more value to corporate clients. This can be around ERP integrations, API, or data. And one, to be honest, one perfect example of such partnership is our relationship. So between Ziv's company Nimble, which is one of the best transaction tech platforms we have seen so far, and my company Calculum, which provides an AI and data analytics platform. And I would say this leads to the next topic, which is we see more and more companies make use of the data as a strategic important asset, especially procurement are leveraging this data insights to gain a competitive advantage when it comes to analyzing their suppliers, their payment terms, and how to negotiate it. And at the end, when it comes to supply chain finance, who they should offer supply chain finance and how to onboard these suppliers to such powerful solution. So, so Amir, if we can please go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So, Mickey, so far we have seen that supply chain finance is great, everybody loves it, but we know from, and we speak with a lot of corporates which have implemented such solutions, that not every program is a success. And I think you're the best here to share some of the key success factors from your experience, and maybe pick 2 or 3 to explain to the audience what you think is key.
No, I think that's a great slide, very painful slide, because, and I wish I had it before we had it in Teva before embarking on the project. But aftermath, I can say that most of the companies and also us are focusing on pricing. So they will battle on every 0.1% improvement in price, while it's not always probably the first thing to do or the most important thing to do. I think that once you approach to these solutions, you have to carefully plan it, because if you're not deploying those solutions, it can be easily a double-edged sword. And let me share with you an example from Teva. So we had those tools, I think from 2016 or 17. But at first, I think we overlooked the importance of training our procurement teams and really implementing the tool in a strategic way. So those tools, as a result, the utilization was really close to 0. And it caused us wasting a decent amount of credit, which was not always available to us by the banks, and also affected our relationship with the banks, because the banks want to see returns. So we've seen in those times the banks pushing us really to let go. And really, once we bundle this together with this with our strategy to improve payment terms and really change our P2P landscape, and which we'll discuss in a second, we realized how we need to execute it. I think the next very critical aspect, and we see some developments also in that area lately, is the accounting side. That tool is very sensitive to accounting treatment and accounting rules. If you are not, in the likes of, you have to speak the right language with your suppliers. Otherwise, you can get kicked out of those rules and jeopardizing in realizing the solutions through that. And additionally, maybe the most important thing, really, the alignment and cooperation with your management and procurement are super important. You can't do it kind of a treasury soul exercise or even procurement soul exercise. We'll talk about it a lot later, but that combination or that alignment between units is strategic for the success of this tool. Steve, what do you think about that?
I can say, Mickey, that I remember the memory that I have from your office after leaving it, and I had just a conversation with one of my clients, the big client, that the program didn't went so well. And I think the one highlight that I took from the conversation with you is the collaboration between the different parties within this process, because there is a lot of them. And the understanding that the CFO and the treasury and the procurement taking this program as a high priority one is something that made a lot of change in the way that I approaching my customers to help them implement the right programs. And if your payment terms are incompetitive and you are using the program to incentivize suppliers to improve terms, careful integration into your strategic effort is necessary for the success. Furthermore, integration with your ERP systems and credit consideration with banks play a key role in designing and ensuring the success of this tool. And lastly, organizations must decide between utilizing a single banking provider or a platform that leverage multiple banking partners as a credit provider. And this tool should be tested very carefully, because you need to understand where is your program is going to operate. It's going to be a global program or only national program? Who is the right player for that? Is the long tail is the focus of the program, or the big suppliers are the focus of the program? Each of those angles have a different perspective on the vendor that eventually will supply the supply chain finance platform and solution. And I think that implementing a supply chain finance program requires a careful consideration of various factors, from accounting, which is also important, the classification of the debt, and a lot of things that CFOs are dealing with, and strategic alignment and integration with the technological aspects, and etc. And if you will choose your steps carefully and have a lot of thinking before you starting the program, and I think that Oliver, what you did, and the way that we are communicating and helping the clients to understand what they need to do before implementing the program is something that's crucial for a successful program like that.
Very, very important slide for all of you. Yeah.
No, I agree with Yusuf. So maybe back to you, Miki, on your experience, and we just mentioned before some of the success factors is the collaboration. So let's go a little bit deeper on that, because I think it's essential to have a great internal collaboration between especially finance, treasury, and procurement. So do you want to give some more insights from your experience on that?
Yeah, absolutely. But then, just not to insult our other departments, it's much more than procurement finance.
Sure.
We talk about
I agree.
IT, we talk about the payment organization, we talk, and probably I'm forgetting 10 others, but it's really, I will talk about the PMO concept that at least we in Teva implemented, but I think it's very important to raise above the departmental view and look at it as kind of a cost organizational project. And I think the way to split it is really, and that's what I try to provide in this slide. Finance eventually plays a facilitative and supportive role, right? Because for those of you who want to improve your P2P processes, probably you focus on improving your payment terms. So finance is really providing that clean area for procurement to go and improve and standardize payment terms. And this is really the right split. And with that, you have a lot of activities that each one of those organizations can really optimize. In my mind, a key component of these successful programs is really the establishment of a project management office. That was the difference for us. That office really comprising those representatives from finance, procurement, IT, and whatever. But that was the key for success. I can't imagine programs that can be successful without that visibility. And that team really works on first setting the targets on supply chain, targets on payment terms, targets on improving payment processes. It can be many objectives that the organization wants to change. And this is really to absorb eventually the changes effectively. Not always you want to change one thing, you want to change maybe sometimes few things in the same time. And that's what the PMO can facilitate. The next thing for us, and which was, I think, the breakthrough in our project, is to create that common language between the departments. Because finance talks about cash flow, finance talks about timing, not near to the procurement jargon, right? They talk about payment negotiations, they talk about cost effectiveness, how you bridge that gap, how you know to translate the cash flow that you need to generate in a certain quarter into how many negotiations I need to complete, what is the success ratio, and timing, right? And I believe we were successful there, and that really streamlined our processes and boosted that cooperation.
Oh, I agree, and thank you for sharing I just want to add 2 points up, and obviously this collaboration is not just super critical to get started, but it's these programs are long term in place. So you also need an ongoing collaboration to facilitate this ongoing growth of such solutions. And then the other thing I want to highlight is the collaboration and all these working parts only work together if you have the top-down support, correct, from the management with clear goals which have been communicated to all the team members. So maybe, Ami, if we can go please to the next slide, which goes a little bit deeper into Mickey's experience with the optimization of working capital. Mickey, if you can please share a little bit your journey, especially after the acquisition of the generic arm of Allergan, please.
Yeah, so that slide needs to capture a story of something like 8 years. But yeah, Oliver, those of you who don't know, Allergan, Teva acquired Allergan in 2016, 17 for $40 billion. It was us acquiring a company in our size and taking almost $40 billion of debt. Overnight, we turned from a cash cow organization into cash sensitive organization. We really didn't care about cash before. We cared about cash, but we didn't have the right processes. And nearly really in a matter of a quarter or two, we had to put processes in place that take other organization years to put in place. We started with investing in core processes such as improving our cash flow forecasting, which was quite loose before because we really had cash. We didn't have to invest too much. In addition, really, as I told you, nobody cared about cash in a cash-rich organization, right? So we had to instill a cash culture across Teva and really work to concentrate our cash flow. CFOs in the regions thought the cash belongs to them. So we had plenty of cash spread around the organization. We have to concentrate it. We have to improve our in-house bank processes. It must start with that base layer. In the next layer, we were leveraging really existing working capital financing solutions such as the AR securitization, supply chain finance, commercial cards that we have. And over time, those solutions were significantly boosting the usage to free up liquidity because we had to have that liquidity. It was cheap, it was available. We just took whatever we could. And in a zero interest rate market, that's what you do, right? You don't want to chase right now the larger organization. It's much harder. You just take advantage of those fast tools. But after the increase in interest rates, we had to shift our strategy and really look into organic optimization, which you can see in the next layer, and sometimes deprioritize the financial solutions because they started to cost sometimes 7% on the dollar. And in Teva, you can see, I think not only in Teva, that's really the result of more than 10 years of zero interest rate. You saw that cash was deprioritized versus sales versus demand, which is normally the thing to do. But I think sometimes you see your counterparties in the organization to support sales. They make decisions that come on the expense of cash. Sometimes demand bias, which we saw in Teva and we are seeing also in our competition. Buying products early to secure the sourcing, trade-off in payment terms, many things that maybe you'll have, but you have to be very careful in looking into. And in Teva, it translated to establishing really a dedicated office, dedicated working capital office. By the way, office that we recruited people not only from Treasury, but from the larger organization to acquire that knowledge that we did not always have. That office gets a huge promotion by the CFO, the CEO, and also comes to support a new strategy of growth for us. And the idea eventually is to be much more proactive than reactive before. So before we just had problems, we start to look for financial tools. Right now, we want to be from scratch in the process and optimize the process itself. How does that sound, Oliver?
Yeah, that's good. Maybe because we have a lot of pharmaceutical companies today in the audience. So let's look at the numbers, at the results. And just in terms of time, I see we are a little bit behind. So if we can just just highlight some of the key numbers, Mickey, for the audience would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some of our competition here, so I can't disclose commercial terms, but I think luckily the opportunities that we identified improved our free cash flow nearly as much as $500 million. And for a company like Teva with 15 billion top line and $2 billion of free cash flow annually, it's quite a big number. We are not looking at it also in terms of releasing cash flow, but we are looking to operate the organization from a much linear balance sheet, and that improvement reduced 3% of the net working capital to sales ratio, which we are very proud in. I think the next thing is the DPO. So our DPO increased by 22 days. And in the way we standardize our payment processes, really to improve our efficiency and cost, and also support our strategic suppliers that agree to those changes through better payment processes. And lastly, you can see what happened to our supply chain financing programs that before that our banks just asked us to let go. Those are boosting. They become, I think, world-class. $400 million are being utilized through those programs. We have a few of those, by the way, Ziv, in different regions. And we've seen acceptance rate of something like 25%. So 1 out of 4 suppliers accepts the program. It's such beneficial for them. And those programs really won recently some of the key industry awards. And the team is very proud about it as well.
Yeah, so maybe now everybody saw the results. I'm sure everybody wants to also have their own program in place. So for everybody who's listening today, sure they want to know what are the key steps to get started. So let me get started on the first two, and then Ziv and Mickey, you can cover the other steps. So very important for the first one, like any project or initiative, before you get started, you need to do the following. So you have to understand the status quo. So that means analyzing where you are in comparison to your peers. Secondly, because when it comes to supply chain finance, it's also about your suppliers and your payment terms. So you also have to understand where you are and which suppliers can benefit from such a solution. And then the last point is who is a good partner to help you in this journey, and because you cannot do everything yourself. Then the second step, and I move a little bit fast because of timing, is, as we discussed before, building this core team to collaborate with the full support from top management, and then also understanding what can be achieved in what time frame. And again, the analysis is key for that. So setting up a proper goal and a target. And for that, for example, many organizations are using our platform, which tells them exactly what are the low-hanging fruits, because when you start such a journey, such an initiative, you want to have a quick success, quick wins, and to also align your terms to the market with the biggest impact on your organization. So, Ziv, do you want to cover the next steps in this journey?
Yes, I think that the next step, we already discussed it, and the change management process will be there very quickly. There is like we mentioned, efficient communication is a key in driving urgency and education the teams towards the process. And of course, in this step, it's important to remember that you need to consider planning for exceptions and maintaining a structured approach, invest in negotiation strategies, and align goals with the larger organizational objectives, such as cost savings, is an initial steps in managing exceptions efficiently. Ongoing training is vital to this process, especially as team interact directly with the suppliers. Not only it enhance your team skills, but also fosters deeper understanding of the procurement of the procurement operations. And you need to make sure that for that you will choose the right platform, the right process, the right way to do it, and the right partners from the internal perspective to drive the process as fast and as efficient as possible.
Ziv, I think, I'm not sure if we have some of our procurement teams in this call, but if you'll ask them, you'll see that at first, and it's natural when Treasury or any other organization from finance comes to procurement and asks for this change, you're always meeting your competition, right? And you'll see some pushback. But once we convinced that the organization that we should improve and we have a room for improvement, it was like they became the strongest advocates. And I think in that regard, it's important to mention the boosting the momentum. Those programs take time. It's not something that you change in 1 month. I'm not talking about supply chain finance deployment, but more on the payment term side. You have to boost liquidity. I'm sorry. I'm talking treasury. But you have to boost momentum. You have to celebrate those successes. You have to carefully choose those early birds. And it continues with measuring the organization, putting the right KPIs on the lower levels possible, and create kind of a frequent drumbeat monitoring reporting processes. It won't work if you don't have those solutions. Amir, I think we can move to the next step.
Yeah, so maybe just as we close the webinar, just to a quick recap, right? So we understood, and I think it's clear that working capital is a top priority for many organizations. We explained the different options available, which we highlighted supply chain finance as one of the strong solutions in place, which allow both sides of the supply chain to improve working capital. Then we look at the key success factors, with a great example of Teva's journey. So now, if everybody here in the audience is like, okay, this could be interesting, so what are the next steps? So it's very simple. We selected here 2 steps. The first one is taking the opportunity to start reviewing where you are today in terms of your key working capital metrics, especially when it comes to payment terms and your suppliers. And this will give you a good idea on how much free cash flow you're leaving on the table today, and what you can achieve. The second one is to understand, again, the different options and also the different partners and technologies available. And the good news is, so today we have Miki, Ziv, and myself, and we are happy to help in your next steps if you're interested. So I think Amir, in the next one is the Q&A, and we will add there the email address. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or looking at the next steps.
Yeah, so yeah, as Oliver mentioned, now we open the floor for Q&A session. Please feel free to ask any question you may have for speakers. I see that we have a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's start with the first one.
So perfect.
What made the breakthrough for Teva in this project?
So I think few things. One, the endorsement of top management. The endorsement of CFO was very critical. Earlier CFO was really putting all his weight in this change. Second, that trust that we created with our procurement organization and with the other organizations. We were lucky. It's not always like that. And I think it started with that, and it continued also with being able to translate negotiations into cash flow. Once we did it, we just created an oiled machine that really interacts with the organization on a bi-weekly basis, and really hunting those successes. And I think that was really the breakthrough for us.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for this answer. We have another question here. How do you see the role of the CFO and senior management in driving such projects?
Maybe, I mean, obviously, it's mostly it's seen as obviously working capital, which is the topic of today's webinar, is a financing topic, has a huge impact on every organization. So naturally, it's driven by the top management, which in this regard is a CFO, and then which is going down to the treasury, procurement, and then the whole organization. And The role usually is of the CFO to set up the goals, and then and the target, and then discuss with treasury procurement what are different options available as we had it today, and then to set up the target in terms of timelines and what is achievable, and the whole communication internally to have the right collaboration in place, I would say.
Oliver, I want to add to my perspective to it,
Okay.
and not looking only on the procurement side. Also, I think working capital should be kind of embedded through all your operations. And I think if eventually the CFO is the bridge to channel KPIs to the teams that he actually manages, it won't be successful. The operational teams, the commercial teams, everybody need to chime in. You have to have targets for many processes in the organization. Once you do it, then you create a more healthy organization. It's not effective to do it only on finance and its units, in my mind. But the
No,
CFO is absolutely a strong counterpart with his peers mainly.
Okay, we have another question. Thank you for this answer. We have another question, pretty interesting. So the benefit for supplier is clear, but are you able to increase terms with suppliers while they assume the cost, or who bears the costs?
I can take it from my perspective because we are seeing it a lot. That first of all, if you are not controlling your payment terms or not controlling your cash flow, so Mickey always say that someone control it for you. And from my perspective, and Amir, I think that we have another question regarding to that from a different angle. That if you don't have sensitivity to cash in your company and you're strong enough, why should I implement a program like that? I think it's the same answer. First of all, it's two answers basically. What Mickey mentioned during the conversation, like the acquisition of a company, can change dramatically all the aspect of cash in 1 second, and you need to be ready. And if you want to be modular enough, you need to have the tools, or at least the understanding what you need to do when acquisition like that will come, or when you will need to change something because global macro change. And this is one answer. And also, if you want to control and to have a better relationship with the suppliers, and you implementing a tool like that, it's much flexible for them to get a decision when and why they want to get paid. And if you're starting the negotiation process from an angle that you already have the solution, so the procurement have another tool to earn something in the negotiation for new suppliers. And this is why I'm telling that this is a long period collaboration with the vendor that operating the program, or with the bank. You need to understand that this tool is there for the long term, and when you have it, you have a stronger relationship with your supplier, and a much more modular action to do to each of the changing that you will probably have in your company in the future.
Zim, I think a lot.
Maybe
that's it. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
No, just because I don't know. Maybe it's one of our clients who asked this question, because we have one client which is cash rich, but they found out that basically they are paying the suppliers much earlier than the competitors, and which is very nice of them, correct? But then they also, through the analysis, we showed them that these suppliers are using this additional liquidity to accept longer terms from their competitors. So that means that our client is financing, basically our client is the bank of their competitors, so it's not only about cash flow, it's just being aligned, being competitive in the market, and which is key, especially in such a competitive market like the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh. And to add another angle, one of the parts of the question was who bears the cost. So in order not to violate accounting rules, you can't pay the interest rate on behalf of your suppliers. Right. Maybe you decide that this is a strategy that suits you, but by that you will violate the accounting rules and you will recognize the program as dead. You need to be super agnostic to the payment side or to the interest rate side. Now we've seen programs that just the suppliers are increasing the price to compensate the cost, and you have to acknowledge and manage that as well. But the way you market the solution and the really huge benefits that suppliers have when they are deploying those solutions, the flexibility it gives them, sometimes advancing the cash by 1 day because they need it for 1 day. The interest rate is not substantial compared to the flexibility and the power that this solution gives you.
Yes,
So
I
learn
think
the solution and just use it in the right way, in my mind.
Mickey, it's leads me to another question that we can find here from the audience. It's interesting that they ask about working capital solution in Israel and what are the interest rate, and this is exactly what you mentioned. First of all, we started our journey in Israel from the understanding that we need to change and shift a little bit the thinking of CFOs and companies in Israel, because there is a lot of place that companies can improve within this field. And about the interest rate, it will be for sure something that for this 1 day or 2 days will be for the supplier, especially for the small supplier, much better than borrowing money from the bank and do it on their own obligo. This flexibility and the understanding that they can lie on the risk level of the corporate will for sure give them some advantages. And you can find at Nimble, we also always recommend our lenders, our bank, that we want to work on scale. We want to have a program that is much more scalable than profitable for each unit economic. And when you're coming with this approach, the interest level will be much lower and much more competitive regarding to comparing to other source of funds for each of your suppliers. So we have like a solution like that in Israel. We started our journey from there. And if you know how to do it in the right way and use the credit risk of a strong corporate that you are working with, the interest rate will not be an issue eventually.
Yeah. Maybe we discussed Israel, and I'm not sure how many of our audience really operate from Israel, but our observation, as if I think we share the same idea. We see opportunities in the Israeli market. So the Israeli market is less mature in terms of supply chain finance adopters, and those of you who will be the early birds I guess they will grab a big market share. We at Teva try also, as part of being one of the biggest Israeli companies out there, we try to help the market in knowing those solutions. But we definitely see an opportunity here, and I'm sure that Ziv and his company and other companies will be happy to explore this with you.
Okay, thank you, guys. We have another question that Mickey, Michael, maybe you'd be happy to answer. What strategies you implemented in Teva to optimize inventory levels without compromising service levels?
Yeah, wow, that's inventory management in the pharmaceutical companies and other companies is pretty much the hardest thing to do. And I think there are certain degrees of management here. First, you need to probably acknowledge that after many years of zero interest rate, probably you have an opportunity to change. That doesn't mean that you will go from the point that you are here right now to the most optimal place in 1 year. It's a journey. But I'm not sure that always treasury people, finance people are so deep into the supply chain processes, right? We've seen in Teva that our demand forecasting processes, the S&OP process, what we call it, was completely agnostic to cash because we had to sell. And when our commercial teams are talking to our supply chain teams and the conversation ends in that forum, nobody in that forum really is sensitive to cash, right? So sometimes it's enough that you have one CFO there or someone from treasury or some other finance organization really to get that consideration in. Once it's in, people understand you, that solves 20% of the problem. And then we at Teva, we embarked in a large project with a big consulting firm that we sliced and diced all our operations on the inventory side. And we try really to optimize each one. together with the periphery operations, right? It's not easy, but you have to be there. I think inventory is the biggest working capital element in our industry for sure. It also talks to inventory finance, things that we did not mention here, which are much difficult to implement than supply chain finance solutions.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. We got a lot of questions actually, but we have only 5 minutes till the end of the webinar today. So we'll answer one more question, and the rest we will follow up with the answers for the rest of the questions we didn't have time to answer. So the last question: what are the 2-3 main roadblocks you faced with suppliers, and how did you resolve them?
I guess that question. Oh, so Oliver.
Yeah, maybe I mean, just starting. I mean, first, you have to approach the right suppliers, correct? So it doesn't. I mean, you will have more roadblocks if you don't know which suppliers you should approach. So it's key to know who can benefit, and also have all the information ready when it comes to negotiating payment terms. But then, I don't know, Miki, you wanted to say something maybe based on your experience?
In my experience, not all of your counterparts know the powerful impact of supply chain finance. And we've seen it a lot. And luckily, we trained our procurement teams and they conveyed the message very well. But sometimes it went to a CFO discussion or CFO treasury discussion. And once we explain it from our side, we also collect money, right? We are looking for supply chain finance from the other side. And once they understood it and they realized that we come from an honest place to really help them, it made things much easier.
Okay. Thank you to our speakers, Michael, Oliver, Ziv. As I said, we got a lot of questions. We'll follow up with an email with all the answers. I wanted to thank the audience for joining us today. Feel free to contact the speakers. We have the emails here in the presentation. You can contact them through email or LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us today. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.